And now I'm going to introduce Kevin Brophy. Professor Kevin Brophy is the author of 13 books of poetry, fiction and essays. His latest book is Walking, New and Selected Poems, John Leonard Press, 2013. He teaches mainly poetry and short fiction in the creative writing program in the School of Culture and Communication at the University of Melbourne. His poems, fictions and essays have appeared in the Best Australian Poems, the Best Australian Essays, the Best Australian Stories, the Best Australian Everything. He has been a recent board member of Going Down Swinging, 2009-2012, and 4 times a judge for the Victorian Premier's Literary Awards. And through Hit and Miss, he's the publisher of chapbooks by Melbourne poets. Kevin and I have read together 50 times. This is the 50th time we've read together. So please congratulate us for that. And some of Kevin's friends says he's a saint. So I looked up the word saint, and a saint is a person who makes you act better when you're in their company. And so that makes Kevin a saint. So please welcome Saint Kevin Brophy.
Thanks, Myron, for keeping the microphone up at such an idealistic height. I hope you're all on your best behaviour. I'll be reporting you to the great divinity afterwards. Now, I think I've got 60 seconds to do a reading, and then I've got 60 seconds to tell you who wins the magnificent cup. And then we've got to be out of here by 4 o'clock. Is that right?
No, we can be out by 4:15. You've got till 10 past 4.
There are at least 8 different schools of philosophical thought. There are at least 5 tree trunks jammed against the bridge today. I counted 6 children on the street. I must try to remember why I went out without umbrella, hat, phone, list. There are at least 9 different kinds of personalities in the world. Each one is split into 3 distinct subtypes. Count them. There might not be enough children to cover all types if the birth rate keeps falling. There are at least 4 possible forms of government. And in a lifetime, you are likely to experience at least 2. I have just come from a town where every house has a cave beneath it, carved from the bedrock. There are at least 2 kinds of workers in the world. Sometimes there are old wells under the houses, from the time when water was best found in darkness. Soon, more than 4 in 10 of us will live more than 3 floors above the ground. Though her fingers are now always bent, her piano does not know this and still sings for her. For every question you can think of, there are 3 possible answers. We bend so naturally towards the earth. We go so easily onto our knees in churches and gardens. No one knows how many genders there are. I have counted 5. There are at least 12 sides to every argument. Argue them. And 6 sides to every door. Ask a carpenter. The high bells that chime at midday sing of the forges in which they were fired. Orchards of apple trees count out their fruit above corpses in the soil below them. I stand at the stove and stir soup for 2, knowing there are at least 8 different schools of philosophical thought, and each one has an answer to everything. These are poems from the time that Andrea and I spent in Rome and Italy from February to July this year. We missed the train. I took a photo of you in your new pink jacket as you read a book on a metal bench on an empty platform. In the photograph, you are alone.
It is midnight. The train line disappears into dark beyond you. A slice of moon laced in mist has been hung above the station master's room. Then a man walked past, holding unsold roses, their bunched heads wrapped in plastic, his night's work at the town seaside pier at an end. Worried the train might be cancelled, that night might stretch sleepless over us, we sat under its chill pale light. The man with the roses sat far from us, twisting his legs around each other. Then, as if something had happened without us noticing, a handful of others came up out of tunnels to the platform, some fiddling with their bright phones, moving loose and confident, midnight just another version of midday. The train swung in on its curve, loud and solid enough to be believed in at once. We left the moon to its seaside scene, a murky sea moving under it, the shoreline a dark sweep brushed along the edge of town, hotel facades fading under a dusting light. And we settled to the train. We forgot everything. We counted stops all the way home, children coming in after their first real excursion, unsure how they got, finally, to the end of it. I'll just skip that one. What we know. So it's difficult to work out what we know. So I hope this is helpful to those people who are doubters or, hungry for knowledge. We know that the sun comes up when we pray, that it's here to bless us every day. We know that communists boil children to fertilise their socialist fields. We know that Italy has the most beautiful secretaries in the world. We know that there are giant rats swimming in the Tiber. We know that the heads of royal personages rattle when they fall. We know that drugs are merely chemicals, and happiness is too. We know that the Virgin Madonna was too young to be a mother, that Joseph was 100 years old at least, and should have known better. We know that dictators go weak at the knees when US dollars are crisp and new. We know that slavery is still a preferred arrangement for the most successful capitalists. We know that 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning can be the most segregated hour in the week. We know that somewhere soon a last wild cat will stalk past an automatic camera. We know that hatred is its own relentless river and we are swimming in it. We know the facts keep changing their colours, their loyalties, their names and addresses and their estimated income. We know the bats are blind and that we too close our eyes when the long evening comes. And we know that the soul is a myth and that our hearts might stop pressing so hard if we could close all the doors and shut up the windows and seal up our homes and turn up the heaters. The wolf falling from the building in front of our eyes is a message we can never be sure we'll survive. Why is it that as soon as you get up to read with a watch on your wrist, the time starts moving more quickly and fast? That I think that the stopwatch starts beating in time with your heart and it makes time rush. So this is, sometimes while I was in Rome, I tried to write poetry, at least a poem every day. And what I found was after a while I was writing, I didn't know what I was writing, I was just writing. And things came out. This is A Life in 50 Moves. Dropping an envelope into a box, opening a door and going through, descending twisting sets of steps, shaking hands then letting go, pulling at a nail until it releases and sends me tumbling backwards like a clown falling off a ladder, dropping my wallet, watch, glass, touching your hand accidentally, tripping down a step, pushing through a turnstile, climbing over gates, slipping between barricades, sliding down a tree trunk, falling off a swing, jumping from a board into shining shattered water, bumping into walls of glass and waiting for an automatic door to open, chasing sheep or cats, pushing bikes through rooms, timing a leap upon an escalator, holding hats on heads beneath propellers, jerking open umbrellas in the wind, waving to a friend passing on a bus, jumping onto trains, running fingers down a library shelf of Dewey numbers, dropping fast and stopping hard in an aeroplane of great proportions, twisting doorknobs, fighting locks, shaking hands with a man of some importance, jumping when a car backfires, waking up alone and frightened, buckling on a safety harness, skating through a park, chasing money down the street, breaking nibs and pencil ends on paper sheets, kneeling in a church, bending down to talk to children, looking up at clouds of darkness, kicking sand, kicking goals, kicking at car tyres, tossing tennis balls into the blue above, pressing buttons in a lift, jumping cracks in footpaths, sliding down the sides of mountains, travelling on trains, swimming in a river, rolling down the bank, pulling bell ropes lustily at Easter, walking into brand name shops, climbing hills to villages, asleep on summer afternoons, and knowing this must stop. So, dear A, this is the way I see it. We make the bed together in the morning, bending over it, our palms smoothing the blue sheets, pulling the blanket taut, straightening pillows. Then you run a hand over the cover as if the bed itself might need this final comfort of touch. Morning sunlight comes in through the window, interested in what's going on, touching everything in the room with its curiosity, illuminating dust in the air disturbed by our snapping of sheets and blankets. The mirror stands watch over all this as we straighten up on either side of the bed, almost in this light, twin angels in a side chapel of a church that's long lost its congregation, but doesn't care about that. This is enough, this pose we mirror in each other across a bed that will always, in the darkest part of each night, become such a large and wild sea to swim across if we are to find each other again the next time we open these eyes. And I'll do two more. Maybe one and a half. I'll do one and a half more. So, while we were, seeing as we're speaking about mothers, we'll see a little bit about fathers as well today. And I'll read a poem that I could never read to my father. But while we were in Rome, I knew that I would lose contact with my 96-year-old and 91-year-old mother, 96-year-old father and 91-year-old mother, if I didn't send postcards. So every week I'd send 2 or 3 postcards. And then I got word back from my sisters that my father wanted to send me a letter, and he was very anxious to make sure he knew what my address was in Rome and that the letter got there. So my father wrote to me 2 pages on borrowed stationery. He wrote to both of us. The letter took 11 days to reach us. He begins shakily but formally with an organised and disciplined firstly, letting me know, firstly, that the postcards have been arriving, that for him it's part of imagining himself with us here in Rome. I have sent them popes and some nuns, but mostly ruins. Once his letter settles more flowingly to its current, there's no need for secondly. And lastly is never mentioned. Though the ups and downs of old age are there, as he's ending up with a long dying paragraph on homely pleasures, children seen and visited, I hear the stretches of his sentences that do not aim to find stopping places or formal endpoints most minds might think it is correct to make. Like his speeches at family functions, his formal phrases reach us with blunt-crafted purpose. There with you, both of you. The purpose is to thank you. As if he knows his plainly made letter might well be the last I'll have of him, and on my mother's borrowed flowery stationery. And one very brief one, if I can find it. And then we announce the winner. Is that right, Myron? Yep. I can't find the one I was going to read. Oh, yes, here it is. One of the books I fell in love with when I first came across it, and every now and again there are those books you fall in love with straight away, is Pablo Neruda's Book of Questions. So here's a few questions in homage, really, to Pablo Neruda. Where is it the streets are taking us? Where are the machines that won't eat us? What does the light keep falling for? Where is it the clouds are leaving for? Who is it muttering those rosaries over us as we go? Does the earth really prefer its coat of snow? What is it I hear that wakes me each morning? Why does the moon keep returning? What law made night the time for sleep? Will we ever find another rock to worship? Will the moon finally make it into the sea? Does dusk compete with dawn in vanity? Or are they ignorant of each other too? Tell me, which of the gods thought of bamboo?